Okay, on this video, we are just jumping right into number 12 for our example. And the reason I like to do number 12 is that it pretty much encompasses everything from completing the square steps. We group things together, we factor coefficients, we even have minus signs in here. We have x squared terms, we have y squared terms. Basically, this is going to encompass everything we need to do in getting our equation into the standard form. So really what's going to change between past problems like a parabola or just practice problems for completing the square, the difference between those and this is we're going to have to do the steps of completing the square twice. So we're going to do it once, like each time we do this step, we'll do the step once for the x terms, and then we'll go back and do it for the second time for the y terms. So let's just jump right in. So number 1, again, these are the steps of completing the square. So when you see these numbered rows, that's what I'm doing. So step 1, the first time we do it, we're going to group the x's together. So that means we're going to group the 25x squared and the plus 100x together. Right? You can just rearrange it. The properties of addition say that I can move these around. All right, now this is where, again, we're not going to go to step 2. We're going to do step 1, but for the y terms. So basically, we're going to go through and change anywhere we see an x in the commands or the steps, we're going to treat it as a y. So as we do that, the first thing I want to note is it says minus 16y squared. So what do we do about this parentheses we're talking about? Do we put a plus sign here in the middle, or do we put a minus sign? And what I'll tell you is I'm going to put a minus sign right away. So minus 16y squared. But by doing that, we also have to catch that that minus is distributed to everything in the parentheses. So minus 16y squared works, but we want to end with a plus 96y. So inside my parentheses, that gets a minus 96y, because if you check minus 16y squared and then minus negative 96y does get us the plus 96y. Okay, and then minus 444 equals 0. Okay, step 1 done. Great. Number 2, what does step 2 say? Step 2 asks us to factor out the coefficient. It's saying a because that's in the general form. That's what it looks like. So now we need to pull that 25 out of the x. So we're going to say 25 times the quantity x squared plus 4x. Remember, we have to factor that out of both terms. So 25 times 4 gets us 100x. Okay, and then we're going to say minus 16 comes out front. Y squared, that works. And then minus, well, let's see. 16 to 96, that, let's see, what does that factor out to be? I think that's 6. Oh, 6y, sorry. But if we check that, 16, 6, carry the 1, 3, yeah, 96. So we're good to go. All right, so we followed step 2, and we did it for both the x and the y. We factored out the coefficients. Step 3 asks us to add half of the x coefficient squared, or again, we'll do the y coefficient squared. Add that inside the parentheses. So step 3 looks like this. Step 3 says we repeat 25 quantity x squared plus 4x. Now here's where we add half of that 4 squared into the parentheses. Okay, minus 4. So there you have it. We have done step 3. We added half of the 4 squared and half of the 6 squared into the parentheses. Now, step 4, we go back and we subtract that same equivalent amount to the outside of the parentheses. Okay, well, so that means in step 4, that is 25. So what I'm going to add it clear over here to the end of our equation. So I'm just going to kind of keep writing. Because all it says is subtract that same equivalent amount to the outside of the parentheses, which we're still outside the parentheses clear down here. So we're going to subtract this number, but see, again, you've got to be careful. We are not just going to subtract 4 and subtract 9. What we're actually going to do is we're going to subtract 25 times 4, because really if you distribute this out, 25x squared plus 100x plus 100, I really need to subtract 100, or 25 times 4, in order for this number I'm arbitrarily adding to not affect the original equation. So we have minus 444 minus 100. Now here it says subtract this same amount, but I need to take the subtraction of, so minus 16 times 9, well, it's really negative 16 times 9, so I need to add 16 times 9, which is 144. See, be careful, because I'm taking and I'm subtracting the coefficient times the inside number. So in this case it worked out subtracting 100. Here I'm subtracting negative 16 times 9, so I'm subtracting negative 144, which is equivalent to adding 144. So I hope that makes sense and that we aren't too confused on that, but I'm going to keep going. So step 5. Well, see, at step 5, all it really asks us to do is to complete the, not complete the square, but to factor it into a perfect square. So I'll do that. That's step 5. So 25 times the quantity x plus 2 squared, right? Because when you have this perfect square, it's really just x plus half of that term. Okay. Minus 16 y minus 3 squared. Well, I am going to make this an extra step. Sorry, I said it equals, but there. I just want to make one step at a time. So step 5 really truly does just ask, hey, complete the square by factoring those into perfect squares. So we're most of the way there, though, right? We have this down as step 5, completing the square. We're done. But the problem is asking us to write the form of the conic section in standard form. So we need to keep going. So the first thing I'm going to do is move all of these numbers here, these constants, over to the right side. So I'm just going to keep going. And what you're going to find is by taking add 444 to the right side, right? That negates this one. So we start with 444 plus 100, so 544 on the right hand side. 544, but we subtract 144 from both sides. So 544 minus 144, what this is equal to is 400. So we're really close. We can see that I made a mistake, actually. The first part of these example problems, it's asking you to identify what kind of conic section this is. So let's go back and identify this as what type of conic section it is. And it is a, well, x squared and y squared. So it's not a parabola. They are not the same coefficient. and it is a opposing sign. It's a positive x squared and negative y squared. So what we have here is equal to a hyperbola. So again, I apologize that I did not start with that. But so we have a hyperbola. What I'm getting at is we need to get this into a standard form. So that looks like not 25 in front of the x or a 16 in front of the y. So what we need to do is, well, let's divide everything by 400, because the standard form of a hyperbola says that the x squared and the y squared terms equal 1. So the first thing I'm going to do, actually, and I'll even note this in red, is I'm going to divide everything by 400. And in the end, what that gets us is, well, 25 over 400, x plus 2 squared, minus 16 over 400, y minus 3 squared, equals 1. Well, 25 divided by 400 is a nice even 16. So we have, what we end with is x plus 2 squared over 16 minus, now if you took 400 divided by 16, what you get is a nice even number. So we have y minus 3 squared. 16 over 400 is really equivalent to 1 over 25. And 400 over 400 obviously is 1. So if you look at that, we have ourselves the standard form of a hyperbola, nice and even. There you go. Thanks for listening. 12 minutes, not bad. That is probably the lengthiest one I could see us coming across, but check the other videos. There's a couple other examples where we're not as in depth, but honestly, if you watch this video and understand every single step we did, ellipses and circles and all of those, they become a piece of cake because they're just not as many steps. So there you go. Thank you and enjoy.